I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
I'm Holly.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 61st installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. And tonight we are going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 9, I believe.
Sure.
Project Daedalus. Written by Michelle Paradise and directed by Jonathan Frakes. Cool thing about this episode is not only does Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker himself, return for the second time this season to direct an episode, but this is the first episode written by Michelle Paradise, who joined the writing staff during the second half of the season, and is going to be the co-showrunner along with Alex Kurtzman in Season 3. So this episode might give us a little bit of an idea how the writing will evolve for Season 3. We will go on a deep dive into this episode in just a moment. I just real quick want to bring up some Star Trek news real quick, is that we have a little bit more casting for the hashtag Picard show.
Right.
As Larry Nimenchek, Dr. Trek calls it, hashtag Picard show.
I like that better than Picard show. Let's do it.
Evan Evagora, who's a 23-year-old Australian model who's going to be playing we're pretty sure who the character he's playing if you've looked at the leaked casting information, but I don't want to get into that here.
We don't even want to just say.
I'll say he's probably the one with the pointed ears, but that's all I'll say. And it's also notable that he had won like a championship in boxing when he was a teenager, and that might play into the character that he'll be performing.
So he's a model, and he's an athlete. Can he act?
We'll find out.
Guess we'll find
in
out.
Late 2019, or maybe early 2020 if it gets pushed back. But enough about Picard and his post-Voyager show. We're going to be talking about Discovery, and we're just going to go down the line and give a very general opening statement without any spoilers, and just kind of say what our main impression of the episode was before we go into full spoiler mode. So, who wants to go first?
Dun dun dun. Father, maybe you should
Okay.
go first. It's been a little while since you've gone first.
So, I will start things off, and like I said, this is the first episode written by Michelle Paradise, and what I think it really shows about her is that she not only has like a good grasp on writing characters, but she has a handle on making the Star Trek Discovery characters feel like that Starship crew, that family that all the previous Star Trek shows have had, that a lot of people have said Discovery might be lacking a little bit. And I love seeing that showcased in this episode. My major complaint with this episode would be that I think it had to do too much work making us invested in these characters, and Arium in particular, who is really showcased in this episode, even though we haven't had much reasons previously to have any investment in this character. She's probably like spoken the least out of anyone on that bridge. And I wish that they had done things leading up to this to kind of, set things up with her, and also with the dynamics they try to establish here with some of the other bridge officers. And if this episode hadn't had to do all the work...
We literally don't even learn if she's an alien or a human until this episode, right?
Yeah, that's something
that's kind of a big...
we've been talking about before.
Yeah.
But I think with what what Michelle Paradise had to do in this episode, like the objectives of this episode. I think she pulled it off very well. There are some parts of it that do feel kind of cheap, kind of emotionally manipulative. But then again, you have to think that she only had like 53 minutes to do this.
Yeah. I mean, if she, could we come up with a better way to do it in 53 minutes than she did? Probably not. Even if we think that overall, if you could reshape the whole season, we could make it better.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what we'll get from her moving forward in her expanding role in Star Trek Discovery's future. That's all I got. Dave?
So I think I have a more critical take on it. I sort of felt like the storyline moved kind of heavy-handedly from plot point to plot point, and there was kind of like a big info dump from Cornwell about joining him up early on, and honestly, it felt like it kind of turned up to 11, not 11, but it turned up the central criticism I've had of the show, that sometimes things are propelled forward, and it doesn't feel very organic to me. I liked what the story was. I actually liked the big reveals about control and the nature of the threat, and how like some of the stuff that had been seeded earlier, and even right down to Michelle Yeoh talking about the threat assessment computer in her own in the mirror universe, and how that would end up becoming a thing here. I liked how that played out, and I liked how the actors brought the scenes to life as always. But yeah, the plot seemed clunky to me. I felt like Pike was just kind of, I guess we're going to the prison to free him, and that it seemed like it was happening in a sort of haphazard manner. So as we talk about it, we'll see where we end up. But I was a little torn on the episode. I felt like I was like liking it, but then something would happen that would frustrate me. Brian?
Overall, I liked it. I think this is another great example of why season 2 is some really good Star Trek. It's I can't honestly say it was my favorite episode of the season. I think I might still go with last week's over this one, but this was enjoyable, fun, interesting. There were a couple of plot points we'll get into later where I was like, really, you could have thought that through a little bit better. But overall, I was on board. I enjoyed it. A solid piece of entertaining Star Trek.
Overall, I liked it. I will say it probably grabbed me less than the other episodes this season, but that doesn't mean I disliked it. There was... Section 31 is not my favorite thing in the Star Trek universe, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I don't think that's any of our favorite thing in Star Trek, or at least not the way that Discovery has been using it.
They've got, as it happens, like having Michelle Yeoh and now Ash in there, who I think most everybody at least I think enjoys Michelle Yeoh's performance or portrayal of Georgiou, and Ash is pretty cool. It's more the concept of Section 31 that I think we're having issues with sometimes.
But this episode did a lot to kind of make me see how it might fit in a way that I approve, that I end up enjoying after all.
Its use in this, not the existence of it.
I don't actually object to the portrayal of Section 31 in here per se. I don't want a whole TV series of this, but
you're getting it.
Yeah, I know. My biggest gripe is still, why would you hire Georgiou? But that's my only.
You looked at her resume. Yeah. I think the scary thing is they did look at the resume and they're like, yeah, we like it.
Yeah. But besides from that, and I even like the character, and it's just sort of the story of how she became part of Section 31. I don't really buy, but the rest of it, I'm actually fine with Section 31 as presented in this series.
It's funny because I enjoy the scenes of Section 31, and I like the character of Georgiou, and I like Tyler. It's a philosophical point. While I've said before that I don't think that we will ever have any new humans like Star Trek The Next Generation, I would still like to see Star Trek run with the ideals of what does it mean to be a good person, and what would our world be like if everyone were a good person. And so I don't like if Section 31 continues as a story, what I want to see them do is prove that Section 31 is a bad idea, and we don't need to be like everybody expects us to be. We don't have to be that way. And I think Star Trek could still tell those good stories and say that we don't have to be that way, you know, because it's not necessarily a realistic hope for the world, but I think Star Trek can show us the world that we could have.
It can be an unrealistic hope.
An unrealistic hope.
Well, if we can't live in that utopia in reality, we might as well live there in fiction.
Right.
They're a little bit of the... Section 31 is a little of a fly in the Roddenberry ointment.
But I don't feel that way about Section 31 and its previous depictions outside of Discovery, where they're more of a mysterious, you get the impression, smaller, and often portrayed as the bad guy or the villain type of entity. Whereas, like, Discovery making them a actual functioning part of Starfleet and, like, an official aspect of the Federation, that's where I kind of have problems with it. However, I am starting to see that they might have a plan on where they're going with that.
I could totally see how after this episode that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't really have a problem with Section 31, you know, the way it was presented in DS9 originally. I think it's such an excellent story generator that, of course, you're going to want that. If you're a writer on Star Trek, you're going to want to be able to play with those toys. And I think it does actually create opportunities where you can show the advantages of being like the noble traditional Star Trek Roddenberry idea of the future society,
right?
And triumph over the more sinister and cynical
means necessary.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a story that we need presented in modern day. So I don't have a problem with Section 31 as a concept. It's just that their specific application here, I guess. Dave, I believe, has prepared the warp speed summary.
Yep.
So we're going to go ahead and go into full spoiler territory at warp speed right now. Just give you a quick rundown of the episode, recap it all for you, and then pick at it with a little bit more detail and reveal all the secrets of this episode.
That's the plan.
So if you don't want spoilers, tune out now. Otherwise,
I don't know what they're even here for at that point.
Otherwise, Dave,
ready for it?
Engage.
All right, so for Season 2, Episode 9, Project Daedalus. Harboring the fugitive Spock, the Disco is the most wanted ship in the galaxy. But now they have an ally, Admiral Cornwell. She's been poking into Section 31 at Pike's behest. She hooks Spock up to a futuristic lie detector said to be 100% accurate, and the verdict is non-deceptive. Maybe they should have run that earlier. But there's still a video of Spock showing off some sweet kung fu moves as he kills the doctors where he was being held, and that's 100% accurate too, so what gives? Well, we'll get around to that. Cornwell reveals that the quartet of admirals who run Section 31's threat assessment program, Control, haven't taken her calls in weeks, and even though their computer is supposed to receive data from every Starfleet admiral, she's been locked out of it lately. She thinks it's the work of Admiral Patar, a Vulcan logic extremist. Since the Red Burst, Patar's been lobbying Starfleet to turn decision-making entirely over to Control, giving Section 31 immense power. Cornwell's afraid to raise the issue with Starfleet, though, lest Patar discover her suspicions, so now she's teaming up with the Discovery crew. She's got a specific plan: go to Section 31's forward base, creepily located in a space station, arrest Patar, and get Control to give her back her damn access. First side story is Commander Arium, who we haven't seen a ton of, but in this, she's still quasi-possessed by the Future Probe, and she gets a lot of focus in the episode. We see how she edits her cyborg memories, like we edit photos on our phone. We see her keeping some memories of very personal connections that are deep, like her happy elopement, and some are more casual, life-affirming moments, like her friendship with Tilly. And we learn, basically, this emphasizes she's a cyborg with strong human connections. Second side story is the Burnham and Spock side story. Spock and Burnham debate all the same questions the viewers have about the Red Angel. Burnham thinks logic will inspire Spock and continues their conversation over some 3D chess. Spock, during the course of it, uses acidic criticisms of Burnham to reveal his belief that she tries to shoulder every burden rather than coming to terms with them or asking for help. And he's enjoying his anger, finding his failure or perceived failure liberating. We also learned that the logic extremists that Burnham thought were targeting her as a kid were in fact targeting Spock. So the big action of the episode is Disco using these Kirk-style chaotic tactics to throw off a shit ton of drone mines surrounding Section 31's base. Admiral Patar chastens them on the view screen and says a Section 31 ship is on the way to pick them up. but Burnham, Ariam, and Security Chief Nan beam over anyway. The frozen bodies of the 4 admirals behind Section 31 are found, dead apparently since the start of the Red Angel craziness. So, holy crap, the Patar they were talking to, they realized, was a hologram, and that same tech was used to frame Spock for murder. The threat, it seems, is not Patar and the others, but their computer, Control. Control wants all the AI-related data the Discovery recently downloaded from the Sphere in the episode An Opal for Charon, which Ariam has been sneakily downloading. If Control gets it, it can become fully conscious and destroy all life in the galaxy, as the Red Angel warned Spock. Ariam knocks the hell out of Burnham and Nan when they try to stop her upload. She's only gotten 25% of it done when Burnham traps her in an airlock and Tilly talks to Ariam's human half into asserting some control. Burnham finds herself forced to eject Ariam from the airlock into space, and Ariam is even begging for her to do it before she gets the information uploaded and kills Burnham and destroys the Discovery. But Burnham can't quite bring herself to do it. At the last second, Nan reaches over the controls and ejects Ariam into space, but not before Ariam has revealed that Control wanted her to kill Burnham specifically. Everything was because of you, she says. You have to find Project Daedalus. At which point, she is shortly thereafter ejected into space, where she dies. Cut to credits.
So thank you, Dave. And
some heavy shit going on in the end of this episode.
Yeah. So that was kind of like my reaction watching this. Was at the beginning of the episode, I was kind of having some trouble getting on board with just the way that the narrative was unfolding. Some of the concerns that you actually had in our opening statements. Mm-hmm. But then by the time we got to the end, I was so hooked on what was going on. I never thought...
The actors often bring a scene through to me, or like the writing in an individual scene will, where sometimes the plot will not.
Yeah. I never thought I would, like, cry if the character Ariam died. But I did.
They actually did a really good job with their...
See, I was like, okay, why don't they beam her to the brig? Okay, she's out in space, they can beam her to the brig.
Was that one of your technical issues?
That was one of my technical issues, was like, just beam her to the brig.
Can we assume that they're... they beamed them over.
They've established the transporters are working.
They knew that. We knew that some of their major systems were down.
But they established that the transporters were functional and could beam through solid matter. So beaming somebody out from space right in front of them is going to be even easier.
They probably could have come up with a pretty easy reason that they couldn't.
Super easily. They could have just said, like, the station's giving off some type of interference. I can't get a transporter lock.
Right.
Yeah. Now, if they even then they ejected her out of the station. She's not in the station anymore.
Yeah, but it could still be like within whatever field of interference is thrown off by the station.
I guess.
The station's shields or something have gone up. She could have even raised the shields herself before when she was doing all the uploading and stuff.
So they should have had something like that in there.
So were you too bothered by that technical glitch or unexplained bit to enjoy the drama of the scene?
I mean, I understood why Michael's upset and why Tilly's upset, because this person is important to them and clearly was part of their social network and inside their monkey sphere. But I just basically got introduced to Ariam. Yeah, that's just it. Okay, today, this episode. So I didn't feel a lot, especially because I was being annoyed that they could have saved her and they didn't. So I felt, I was sad for them. I was sad for the people I care about, but I wasn't sad inherently because Ariam was gone.
Holly?
I wasn't necessarily sad. It felt like old school television where we really trot out this character that we get to know and love during the episode and then we kill them off, which is a very old school trope.
Kind of a one episode, we got to have a dramatic story, but it's only going to span one episode.
Right. But Ariam, I think, brings up some very interesting ethical questions. So Ariam is a cyborg that apparently had a tragic accident, we learn. And I am curious why we don't see, or we haven't seen more cyborgs in Star Trek before.
There might be some of them who are like, this is what you're going to look like for the rest of your life. And like, no.
Well, and that's another thing is how that would have been interesting to kind of learn is how human is Ariam and how and not, because I don't know. I look at Arium and I'm like, well, maybe that's why I need a good directive to physicians about what I'd want done in certain situations, because I'm not 100% sure. I'd want to know how human, how...
Her memories are stored on computer disks in her head as opposed to her own neural organic brain.
So how
pretty drastic.
Yeah, that is pretty drastic. It's more than just how she looks. And then I also would have thought an interesting direction would have been to have her talk to... Oh, I am so embarrassed that I don't remember the doctor that came back that's... Colbert. Have her and Colbert have a conversation, since he too has come back from the dead.
And is in a different body than he started out in.
I feel clearly she was, if not created for the purpose of it, she was her dramatic use in the season is to be possessed by an evil AI.
Yeah.
And that was her main thing. I am a little surprised that they didn't seed us caring about her a little bit more in some previous episodes, like you were talking about.
She's been around since the 3rd episode of the show.
Right. But had little to do, right?
Like, we got introduced to her the same episode we got introduced to Lorca.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so there was plenty of time, and I'm sure they hadn't planned this far out.
But in this season, they will have, and we're like, what do we decide, 9 episodes in? So they've had 9 episodes where they could have done that. They've done a little bit more with Awosakan this season. Hopefully she's not destined to die too. Well, by the way, I like her aesthetics. I just want to quick throw that out there. I'm like, if I had to become a cyborg, I'd actually be kind of cool with it. I thought it was I feel like it sort of keyed off of that sort of Mass Effect style of design sense, and I thought it was really cool.
The concept is a lot like RoboCop, where you're brought back from the dead as a cyborg.
Right. Do we know how much of her is machine or?
No, I mean,
I think pretty much everything we know about her is in this one episode.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's it. That's everything.
And the fact that she can't hold her memories in her head like a normal person. I mean, that to me, when you're not your memories and you're not your brain, or you're not your mind, how human are you really? I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, so you're gonna have a cyborg arm or cyborg legs.
Well, that said, she seemed to be happy. She was making it work.
It occurs to me that
she clearly had a life and a social network, and she was a happy person.
It sort of dramatically works insofar as when Data appears on Next Generation, he's like the full package. He's got all of those things going on where he can build on his memories, and it's kind of I guess I'm kind of glad to see that if there's a heavy AI character, cyborg, or a full robot or android, that they clearly are shown to not have all the options Data did. It makes sense she would be a sort of inferior version with memory problems, apparently.
I would struggle with that when she was deleting the more useless memories.
She did say it was tedious or difficult.
Well, not that part, but I'm kind of like a pack rat. I keep everything. I don't like throwing anything away. I still regret things I had when I was a kid that my mom sold in a garage sale or something. I regret not having that now. So I never throw anything away. I never.
So you'd be like, maybe I should keep this memory of me peeing. I might want to look at it at some point.
Yes, I don't delete anything on my computer. All the Tex-Trek content ever is. I still have everything saved.
I still have short stories I wrote in high school and junior high on my computer. So.
I have a pretty good memory, and I think a big part of that is just because I don't want to forget anything. So,
well, veering a bit off topic here, but yes, I realized, why do I keep these objects? They're like videotapes. Whenever I pick up this object, I remember everything that was associated with it from my childhood. So this is a memory storage device. Right. And then I realized I could just take a picture of it and get rid of the object and store the picture on my computer.
There's something,
and then I can't quite bring myself to do that, though.
That's because memory is also based on tactility and other things too. So,
well, I suspect the picture would probably work, but I just don't want to go there.
That's what they suggest doing on episodes of Hoarders. Take pictures of things.
Yeah. Anyway, we're veering a little off topic, but
but yeah, there's so much they could have explored with Arium, and that's the frustrating part of this episode was that they had to rush all this character stuff into this episode. And the whole thing of us having the flashback to her and her husband that she died coming back from their when they went and eloped and got married and had their honeymoon, and then he dies coming back and she turns into a cyborg. That's kind of a cheap, like, easy way to make you feel sad for someone type of
a little bit
writing.
I felt like they were stretching the kind of the violin strings at the end with the sort of final memory flash. But the scenes prior to that, I was pretty on board with. I thought they had done a pretty good job of making me care about her by then. Even if they kind of wanted, I think they wanted some tears, and I didn't quite have it for them. Fatheree was the big weepy baby.
Well, I'm an easy mark with Star Trek or anything that has me like really invested into it.
Right.
Well, I think this episode would have paid off better if they just didn't kill her. If they had kept her alive and used her in future episodes,
or had her broken and they need to fix her.
And then, like I said, I would like to see her interact with Kohlberg. I mean, if I were a writer, I'd be tempted to make Kohlberg bisexual and start kind of having things with her and this complicated relationship. Just because I think that in this character that to
Kohlberg's
do all
into
this,
some freaky stuff. Mushroom boy, cyborg girl.
and I'm just thinking,
a man of many tastes.
Yes.
And it's not because I'm not opposed to them killing characters off when they do it in a good and dramatic way. If somebody has a good complete story, a good death can be really good. But I feel like with her, they go and they introduce. They kind of have this character that we don't know anything about. We suddenly learn something about her, and she dies, and it feels like they misused this, and they could have kept her around for something more interesting in the future.
I think I know why they did it.
They needed to control a bad guy.
Well, I think there's that's a good point. Is that just dramatically, your bad guys sometimes have to create some collateral damage. But then I also think they had 9 seasons of Data. Or seven seasons of Data, and AI and artificial intelligence questions. I think they knew that the viewers might rebel, if they felt they were going back to that well. I do think that they should have seeded this better, and it would have been interesting to talk about, show how her memories worked in a previous episode.
Well, not hypothetical. When do you think they came up with the idea of her backstory? Because I kind of have the feeling that in season 1, nobody knew what she was.
Nobody knew. At one point they said she was an alien, and at another point they said she was a human.
Yeah.
But I feel like they came up with her backstory when Michelle Paradise got hired, and they're like, "Okay, Michelle, sit down and write episode 9 for us." And then she got in front of her keyboard, and that moment was the first time anyone thought about her backstory.
Okay, so it is just as late in the day as it feels like to me. But
yeah, I kind of get that idea too, but I disagree that she would have been another Data since she used to be human. So she apparently still, or maybe had emotions, but she used to be a human. So she's not another Data.
Yeah, I think they could have done something very different.
Yes.
So but again, I'm kind of okay with them killing her here. I wish that we had just seen that stuff before her death, as opposed to keeping her around and
I'm fine with I've already voiced my only complaint about her dying. So
just one more thing about Arium that I want to ask y'all about. Is when we see all those glimpses of her day-to-day life, we see all those cool interactions with her shipmates.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that stuff. I liked Detmer hanging out with her and Tilly. I liked Reese, the Asian security officer on the bridge. I liked him.
Sparring.
Yeah, doing some sparring with her. And it kind of sees her being a physical threat to Burnham later. Who, Burnham is a badass with the Susmana Vulcan martial arts. And I loved seeing that type of stuff. And it, when I said I kind of struggled with this episode initially, when it got to that stuff, I fell in love with the episode because that's something that has really been missing from Discovery is those kind of little people on the ship just being friends and being family, and you understanding each character and their relationship with each other character. They hadn't explored that in these other characters. The season's trying to make up for it. And I loved how they factored that into Arium's story in this episode.
I will say there was a scene where there was all the girls talking, and I was like, why does it feel weird? Oh, because it's all girls talking on a Star Trek show I can't remember the last time I saw this many female Starfleet officers having a conversation together.
It happened in Voyager a few
It
times.
did feel weird to me.
I was
but...
like, that's new. It felt, I don't think it's happened a lot in Star Trek.
Also, when we have the away team to the station, it's 3 women.
Yeah.
But I didn't even notice that until, I think, the second time I was watching this episode.
Fatheree, since you brought up those flashback scenes, I also wanted to say, I mean, on a technical level, I liked that they did those point of view shots for Ariam. I thought those were really effective. I thought they looked neat.
Or did that play into like your love for found footage movies?
I don't think so. But it might be like it maybe adds an air of realism because when those are done well, they kind of create a feeling of realism.
Because I tend to hate found footage movies because I think they all feel like fake and just I can't like connect to them.
Yeah.
But I know.
But you can connect to a robot apparently in one episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, I like them, and that might have been a factor in it. I know you're saying it sneeringly, but it could be true.
Nobody notices her eyes are flashing red, but I thought this is a trope in all of SF.
Yeah. That's for the viewers.
Yeah,
really.
that's for the viewers. You're not really supposed to take it too literally. And the eyes have always been the windows to the soul, so you know, it's.
And do people, when they're busy on the bridge looking at other things, are they bothering to look at your eyes that closely?
Yeah, like my eyes have done that like 4 times and none of y'all have noticed.
It's right there with the fact that the phasers are always making little beeps and buzzes and stuff, and you would never want your weapon to be giving away your position when you're sneaking through the woods. It's just kind of how we tell stories on television.
Yeah.
A visual medium and acoustic medium, so.
We also get more Spock in this episode.
I really liked the Spock, Michael chess argument, not just because of 3D chess, which got me oh so happy, but the whole discussion, the way it played out, all of their arguments. I still feel that I was absolutely focused on what does Michael do about this? What does Michael say in this? I kind of still feel like Zachary Quinto could have balanced the attention on that scene a bit. It felt like a scene to show us Michael as opposed to a scene to show us Spock.
See, I feel like this is the closest to like Nimoy TOS Spock that we've ever gotten. Even though they're doing like the weird thing where they're dialing up his emotions.
Yeah. I really enjoyed watching it. And
if nothing else, I think they did make clear, I mean, with his huge outburst in this one and his ramping up bitterness, like his kind of bitter, like the way he was like needling Burnham, that he is emotionally compromised. He is off his game right now, and probably the normal cadences we would expect from Spock. It wouldn't be unusual for them to be gone.
Yeah, no, it wasn't so much that that he wasn't acting enough like Spock. Is that that actor doesn't seem to have the gravitas.
Okay, I thought you were going to say
gravitas.
just the specific mannerisms.
The pure charisma that Nimoy or Zachary Quinto would have brought to it.
Interesting.
And whereas Michael kind of felt like, she has a whole lot of that gravitas. When she's in the room, unless it's one of the big heavy hitters, she is the focus of the scene when she's talking.
I wonder if when all is said and done, when Spock, if he is, he will, we know he'll be restored at some point, but if we see him do the kind of that sort of sardonic eyebrow raise and have a little bit of his attitude, I'll be interested to see the actor pull off classic Spock.
Yes.
He has not been called on to yet, so I'm gonna sort of withhold judgment until the end. Yeah. Holly, did you...
Well, I was gonna say part of what made that scene so good was that Spock actually happened to be right. I mean, that I mean, and us as the viewers may not realize this, but Burnham takes on a lot of responsibility for things that aren't on her, and she carries a lot of burdens around that aren't hers to carry.
She's developed a martyr complex.
Yeah.
Spock also was interesting. He was his sort of even in his anger, he was also shown to reveal some extreme empathy for Stamets.
Yeah.
When he he said that he kind of led him to re-lens his breakup with Culber.
Yeah.
I liked that conversation because to me that felt like a crossover between a character from one Star Trek show and a character from another Star Trek show having a conversation that I never would have imagined. It kind of felt like when you see Picard talk to Sisko. Well, not even that, because that's like our introduction to Sisko. But when you see Bashir come onto the Enterprise and hang out with Data, like it felt very, very weird, but in like a cool way to see the two of them together. And just the way the conversation played out.
I liked that when people tried to dig into Spock and say, this is what's wrong with you. Spock turns around and says, this is what's wrong with you, which I'm not even sure quite why Spock is doing that, but it is interesting. And the fact that they managed to make it so that he's probably right. You know,
they kind of helped each other out. Like they both kind of told the other guy what they needed to hear.
Yeah, no, I thought that was very interesting. I haven't quite figured out what's going on with Spock, but it is certainly interesting to watch him grapple with all of these issues.
It is funny to have Spock giving relationship advice, though.
Yeah.
I guess, but from his perspective, a logical take on that relationship advice.
Yes.
Yeah, when he basically tells Stamets, you know, it's not you, it's him.
So, is it safe to say that Spock can diagnose everybody except himself?
That's a good sort of general truism, and I think that's probably something that they're getting at there. Although he is like, I don't know, there may be like some physical, fragmentation of his mind from the experiences he's had, so it may not just be purely psychological.
Yesterday I rewatched last week's episode, and he makes the comment about, I remember tomorrow. So, how much of the non-linear prophet-esque thing is going on in his head that he's not telling people. So is that just a metaphor for having seen the vision of from the Red Angel, or is he literally remembering that he escapes and steals a shuttle?
They do like to seed stuff.
So, but yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the 3D chess. So
I thought it was interesting that he tells Stamets, I'm not that unique. I don't know why the Red Angel is after me. Like, yeah, I'm a half human, half Vulcan, but I'm not the only one.
No.
I've always thought Spock was the first half Vulcan, half human.
Well, given his age, he could have been the first, and he's still not the only one now.
That's true.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's not like a baby.
We didn't see the baby Elizabeth in Enterprise, but
yes.
But spoiler alert, that doesn't have a happy ending.
yes. Kill a kid.
So it does make sense that the extremists were after Spock and not Michael, because Michael's 100% human. So, the Vulcan family wants to adopt a human. How cute! But when they start mixing species, you could see how the extremists would have a bigger problem with that.
Yeah. And I thought that Spock was being such a jerk to Burnham, but I'm okay with it because I'm enjoying the ride and I want to see what it leads up to. But where he goes into her room and he sees all of Tilly's decorations and then Burnham's lack of decorations. And he says something like, "It must be an accomplishment to be so uniquely mundane."
That's harsh.
I want Burnham to have like an Xbox Live trophy unlocked for like uniquely mundane. Achievement unlocked.
Yeah.
I will say quickly, Spock as a character sits kind of at the heart of Star Trek now, especially the way he's shown up in Next Gen and jumped into the Kelvin universe, and now he's in Discovery. He's kind of the heart of Trek.
Absolutely.
For him to stand there and say, there's nothing unusual about me, I just don't get it, is wonderfully refreshing.
Yeah.
There's no pretentiousness about the writing. Spock doesn't see himself as the center of the universe.
It makes complete sense.
And you run into writers who sometimes have trouble distinguishing that. Even I do it when my role-playing games sometimes.
Right, you feel like he is so larger than life.
If he has to be special, and to have him just say, I'm not special, is kind of cool. I like that.
For all that I feel like sometimes the plots don't happen organically. I like how some of the conversations seem more organic, and I feel like that was a pretty good example of one.
And then we also see Spock show his love for Burnham towards the end of the episode when she's in danger, and you see the concern on his face.
Yeah.
And when he's telling her, like don't get yourself hurt. You need to.
That classic gimmick where I don't care about you. I don't care about. Oh my God, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
So.
And it kind of frames it in a way where maybe like they're like siblings that like don't get along and hate each other, but they actually really care for each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that dynamic explored.
You want to know when I teared up? It was that.
Yeah.
The Spock and Burnham stuff. That was what made in this episode.
In this episode,
yes, as opposed to whatever happened to Aram.
Well,
it would sort of make sense that they sort of continue their childhood, childlike love-hate thing, since it doesn't seem like they were ever able to really grow up and mature together.
Yeah, they never got closure on that. They
Right.
they still have a lot of stuff they need to process and work through together.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the big bad of the season. Appears to be Control.
Yes. Are we to assume that the Force in the future is Skynet now? Is that pretty much got to be the only explanation that fits all it's certainly the simplest explanation given the clues.
A future where I'll just go ahead and say like my take on it, and then see what y'all have to say about it. But my impression right now is that Control does grow up to be this massive AI that kills all the planets in the galaxy with those advanced weapons that we saw in Spock's vision with the Red Angel, and that it sent the probe a couple episodes ago that went 500 years in the future. It sent that back to install like a Trojan virus on Arium to like get her to bring it the sphere data and basically like make itself more advanced, more early in the timeline.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking is going on.
Do you think
It
it's
is
to make
very
itself,
Terminator.
Do you think it's to make itself more advanced, or to generate itself beyond, like, I mean, like, it seems like, I guess there was only a relatively primitive AI for Control at present in Discovery.
They do kind of say it's wanting to become sapient as opposed to it is sapient.
Right.
It might be like...
There's a line to that
I was
effect.
just wondering if basically it's Skynet kickstarting itself.
Yes. Yeah. Instead of like waiting however long it takes it to destroy the galaxy, maybe it wants to like do that sooner. And I think that this will tie into the short Trek episode
Absolutely.
Calypso. I think that Arium's memories that she had left on the ship's computer, I think that's what's going to evolve into Zora. And I think that
I hadn't thought about that. That's an interesting notion. I like that.
And I think that the setting of that, 1,000 years further in the future, where the character Kraft is at war with someone called the Vidrash, I think that's going to be in like the alternate timeline that's created by Control, wiping out all these planets, and then like there's some fighting going on in the remnants, or Control's like still trying to like kill like the few remaining organics or something like that.
All right.
If they stop Control from becoming self-aware, will it destroy that timeline?
Yeah.
And
We're going to lose the best short Trek.
Interesting.
Well, it wasn't the best. I think that was Dave's least favorite. It was my second least favorite, and I don't hate it. I don't think it was bad or anything, but it felt so like generic sci-fi and not Star Trek. But if I'm right, or if it is connected to this in some other way that I haven't thought of, that will make me like it much more.
Right. Well, I think we would both agree it was well written and well acted. Like there was a lot of craft to it.
There's a lot of craft to the story of Kraft.
Yes.
Craft was well crafted.
What do y'all think about?
That is pretty much the same theory I came up with on the drive over. Actually, was like, really, there could be something more complex, but it really looks like Control in the future just sent back, hijacked Arium in the past, so that it could get access to some data and make itself better in the past. And that's surely, and that unless we have the Red Angel, who seems to be a good guy, we have the blow up the universe bad guy in the future, and it looks, and and then we have the Force that wants to help Section 31. And they'll blow up the universe and Section 31 Force. I'm pretty sure those two are the same faction. We don't have 3 future factions. We have 2 future factions. And that means that Control is almost certainly either allied with or is the future faction that wants to blow up all the universe. So,
do we have any notion yet as to what Control's motivation would be?
That was what I was wondering.
I mean, honestly, if it's that Skynet, like they decided our fate in a millisecond, that's a little too close to Skynet.
Right. Yeah, you need to have like a reason to want to kill all these planets that we see it kill.
But you would think the number one priority for Section 31 is some sort of nationalistic protect the Federation at all cost. Wouldn't it be trying to do that if it went crazy?
Yeah.
I have this feeling that maybe they haven't given us the info we need to piece together its motivations yet, because I'll say this, like, I didn't think, we knew that, like, there was going to be some sort of AI going on, but did anybody have any notion that, who was the Admiral? Patar that she was a hologram,
No.
that the AI was running things. Like, I mean,
No.
they definitely pulled the rug out from under the viewers a few times in this one, and I think they'll probably want to have some twists and turns when they get to motivation.
Yeah.
And I love that because I love being surprised.
Yeah.
I love having my expectations subverted.
Yeah. No, that was all well done. I guess this might be as good a point as any to mention my other big plausibility really moment in this episode. Okay, so Discovery finds this big, what did they call it? This big planet-sized organism. Sphere that wants to dump that wants to give all its information before it dies. Mm-hmm. And it gives this huge pile. They talk about how big it is and how hard it's going to be to go through.
Right.
Wouldn't Discovery say, well, we're supposed to be hunting red bursts. We don't have time to deal with this. Wouldn't they hand it over to a copy over to Starfleet so that the people back at Starfleet HQ could start digging into it, right? And wouldn't somebody say, oh, our super control computer should probably have a copy of this, or wouldn't? I mean, this seems like a really hard way to get a hold of that data when there's probably a copy of it sitting at Starfleet Command that Patar could have just called up and said, oh yeah, could you load that in a shuttle and send it to our space station?
I think I can explain it.
Okay.
It's a little like, though, how they got the plans in Rogue One, how they had to get to the Death Star plans.
But there was a reason to keep those secret. There's no reason for these not to be spread all over Starfleet and having everyone trying to learn as much as they can about it.
But they did establish in an earlier episode that Arium had been doing a really efficient job of like deciphering all that information.
Yeah, but
going
if one cyborg can do that, imagine what happens if you have a whole team of people working.
Maybe she's just like the best.
Has Disco been back to like Starfleet since they got that information? Has it out into space dock or anything?
They've sort of established. I mean, Michael was able to jump on a shuttle and go to Vulcan, so they're clearly not that out in the sticks.
And I know that they have space Wi-Fi, but but I don't know if they've said anything about this, but
I can accept that they need to manually deliver it. That it's such a big hunk of data that transmitting it is cost prohibitive.
Right.
That they need to
hand off a thumb drive.
or a suitcase or something, whatever. Right. But I could accept that. But they have been in such close contact with Starfleet ships. And
you'd think you could put it on a shuttle.
Yeah.
And be like,
I could buy that they've been that the red bursts are seen as such a priority. I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch that they just haven't had time to go back there.
We also have 80% of Starfleet has just been destroyed the year prior to this. So
yeah, but that sort of data, that you would seem like you'd want to get a copy of that to Starfleet HQ, if for no other reason than you don't lose it if Discovery blows up.
Right.
So
yeah, that is a plot hole that I hadn't noticed, but you're right.
It seems like, wow, this was the easiest way you could come up with, huh? Section 31 or Control. Speaking of lost data or losing something because the ship blows up, I was so pleased and egotistically happy to find out that my reason for why the Enterprise stayed out of the war was exactly right. Yeah. My theory from the first episode. I
like that. And I love like Discovery fixing things that I had problems with.
Yeah.
So let's just say it for the listeners. Yeah. They said that it was not, in fact, what was Pike theorized?
It was basically a lifeboat, a survival capsule for the Federation.
They wanted the best of the Federation to be still around if they lost the war.
Yeah.
What did Pike theorize, though? He was wondering if she kept him out of the war for...
Because he said that if you give up your values for security, then you've already lost the battle. And he said, like, is this why you wanted to keep me out of the war? Because I wouldn't let you do stuff like set up minefields?
Right. Basically, yeah, he thought it was because he would be too much of a conscience for them, and they're like, no, we wanted to save you because you're the conscience.
Yeah, he would have punched out Lorca in episode 6.
Right.
I loved Pike. I loved Pike in this episode, as always. He's great, and... Yes. Just some of the dialogue they give him. I love that he said shitstorm. Just
I didn't even notice that.
In a weird way, we've been noticing they were reining in some of their pushing the edge of the rating envelope.
They're reining in the F word.
They definitely reined that in, but I was like, they had a little swearing in this episode. They had some gross corpses and stuff like that.
Oh, the corpses were awesome. I so loved the corpses.
Frozen floating corpses crashing and smashing to the ground.
Yeah, I was like, that is so
it's memorable.
Space is disease or darkness and terror wrapped in disease or whatever that line was. The one that was.
Yeah, that was in the trailers for that movie.
Yeah, I love that
Trek
line.
2009.
I always thought they could have done more with making space scary in Enterprise, and that was a good example of, look, space can be really freaking terrifying. All by itself, you don't need to make up weird stuff. Just inherently, it's terrifying.
Arium is here to show you that in this episode.
Yes.
The show does kind of cover its bases if you give it time. Like, the most notable one was like them getting rid of the holograms. And like some of the stuff in this episode with how they used Admiral Cornwell, I was kind of rolling my eyes at the beginning. I was like, oh, she's just going to show up. We're not going to explain like how they got in contact with her or anything. But the way that they used her, I've kind of had like some issues with Cornwell because I didn't like her wanting to genocide Kronos to win the war. Even though I understand like the stakes were really high, but I was kind of hoping that she would be kind of a Section 31 Badmiral character.
Badmiral.
Like, just to make her more acceptable as someone who'd be willing to do that. And not only do they explain that here, but they also give her things to do to kind of redeem herself, in my eyes at least.
What do they explain about the genocide thing?
Well, it's just like the fact that we see her so connected to Section 31 and the more Black Ops side of Starfleet. And also,
but that she does have a line that she won't cross. That she does.
Yeah. Arguably, if you were like psychoanalyzing it, they don't say this, but maybe some guilt over that is what has pressed her to like really take Pike's suspicions of Section 31 seriously.
That's true. So I did think her showing up would have perhaps made a better cliffhanger to last episode than having her show up at the beginning of this. But I was kind of like, well, whatever. The show's kind of a hybrid between pure serialization and episodic storytelling.
That's true.
So having her show up at the beginning of this is certainly a more traditional Trek way.
Which is my ideal format. I always wanted it to be that hybrid. Me and Dave talked about that a lot, how I wanted to be a kind of a combination of the two methods.
In general, I like where their ratio. I like how they do it.
The hologram stuff reveals I thought were a little kind of potboiler mystery stuff. It seemed like that's the kind of thing that would have been detected kind of early on.
We've seen hologram fakery in Star Trek before. So
yeah. It just
the Spock murders people one. Since that's evidence, I would have thought somebody would have looked closer at that.
Right,
one.
you might have like done
the other ones were why there's no reason to suspect it's a fake, so why would you check? But
we saw it pretty famously in DS9. We saw it pretty famously in the TOS episode Court Martial. Yeah. Where there's footage of Kirk hitting the eject pod button.
Yeah.
Oh, really cool piece of trivia. The Discovery captain's chair has a eject pod button on it.
That's fantastic.
Wow! I never even understood why that button's on the chair in the first place, but whatever.
It makes no sense, but I love that they have it anyways.
Yeah, no, it might as well.
So I got one last character that I think we need to mention was Commander Non, the Discovery security officer who transferred over from the Enterprise. This is the first time where I really liked her.
Right, well, it's also, she hasn't had much to do other than be security.
But she never seems effective at security. In the first episode of the season, we see her, she was an engineer back then, but we see her piloting one of those pods, and she's kind of like panicking about having to use manual controls, and Burnham is trying to coach her through it. And, we were kind of thinking that she would die because she's the one in red. And then I was kind of thinking she was going to die here when Arium is going crazy. But we see her, like, kind of spying on Arium, or kind of, like, keeping an eye on Arium. Yeah. I thought that was, like, too heavy-handed. It was like when she's, like, sitting in the mess hall on the table, like, across from Tyler, like, literally staring at him.
There was so I watched a few of the early seasons of that show 24, and like one of the gags on 24 is that there's always a mole at their CTU, at their counter-terrorist unit, and the mole in season 1 kept on looking out through these blinds in the office, like they would always peer out and watch things very creepily, but they did it for like 6 episodes. We're like, we know who the mole is, we know. And that felt a little, I was having flashbacks to 24.
Yeah, but then in the end, where we see her make the choice that Burnham couldn't make and eject Arium, I loved that.
Oh, after you've had your breathing apparatus wrenched out and you've been thrown around that badly, it might be easier to make the decision.
Minor niggle. Surely your suit would be set up to provide you with that special air.
We
right?
don't know. We don't know what that apparatus does. If it's just like giving her like a different gas that she has to breathe, or if it like ejects something into her blood. It's like built into her cheek. So.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it just felt like, couldn't you switch on your suit, and doesn't it provide you, wouldn't you have your own
That's
suit?
not very
I
dramatic.
looked at that fight at one point, and I thought, okay, so Burnham has Ariam like shut behind a door. She's not going to go check on Non and see.
Oh, that was bugging me the
Yeah.
most.
Yeah, I was like,
like
what? You had somebody suffocating and dying on the floor. You're not going to go
Yeah.
check on him?
I felt
think
like there was like a fish flipping around, and like that always bugs me whenever I see it in a
I
movie or
kind of
something.
felt
I'm
like they might have trimmed that out, because like suddenly she's just there. It felt like there was...
That was to be the surprise
Yeah.
when Ariam gets ejected.
right, like we thought she
mid-sentence.
might have been
Yeah.
dead or something by that point.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I
maybe.
liked the way that was structured and the way that played out. We see a flashback to Burnham when her parents were killed.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of has like a little bit more meaning now that we know that Leyland is somehow responsible for
Yeah.
that. But we clearly hear like Klingons speaking Klingons from outside that closet door.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder, is it like, if we did like see through that door, would it be like Section 31 people like disguised as Klingons speaking Klingons murdering her parents? Or I don't know how he is responsible for this Klingon terror raid, but I'm hoping we find out soon.
Now I'm kind of wondering, did Control in the future influence him in some way to start the Klingon War to make all this happen?
Maybe. That would be interesting if Control was actually responsible for the war and not Michael Burnham herself.
It'd be an interesting way to absolve her. I
Well,
kind of don't like it in the sense of like the story is about her arc and
It's too hand wavy.
Yeah, it's like saying like you didn't even need to worry about recovering from your guilt because you had nothing to be guilty over. I think it's kind of more interesting otherwise, but yeah, that's a long game if it is. I have a quick quibble, and then I'm gonna but I also want to preface it by saying, because we've mentioned that fight scene, I thought that was an amazing fight scene. I want to give him some credit for that before I quibble.
Jonathan Frakes, who also directed the elevator fight in Despite Yourself, Season 1 of Mirror Universe Connor versus Michael Burnham.
Yeah. Oh, and also like Spock's faked takedown was also pretty cool in its mercilessness.
Oh, yeah.
In this. But the thing I was going to say is, so you know how Burnham is also, there's a small side point that she wants to exonerate Tyler, Ash Tyler, for, she doesn't think that he was responsible for the
I'm
signals.
going to prove he's innocent.
Right.
I like that, by the way. That was great.
Yeah, I did
Could
too.
could they not hook him up to the Spock lie detector machine and
Maybe it
just ask
only
him
works
some
on
questions?
Vulcans.
And not to mention,
They're
his
not on
mental
Klingons.
state is so screwed up that it's hard to say
Yeah.
what it would read.
We kind of did
That's
prove
fair.
him innocent now that we know Ariam
Right.
seemed to be behind it all.
Have they put that together, though?
I guess we'll probably find that out next episode. I suspect they will. They don't tend to lag on plot lines like that too much or hang on it. They'll probably just say like, "Well, now that you're exonerated," and But I was just thinking that that machine that their truth telling machine could have come in handy a fair amount. Did she bring that with him, or is that something that the Disco's got?
I don't know, because it looked like a lot of equipment. But these shuttlecraft are really big. They're like the size of a school bus. Like, you can fit a bunch of stuff on
Yeah, she might have brought it. She might have brought the lie detector in her space school bus.
Yeah.
All right, so shall we move on to Easter eggs?
Well, like, the last thing I have is I just want to say, like, why do we have a logic extremist as an admiral in Starfleet?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I get that they were trying to set
The
her
same
up.
reason we have Empress Giorgio in Section 31, because that's how Section 31 rolls.
Yeah, but she's not like only Section 31 admiral. I would assume like she's like a publicly known figure who's like
in charge of oversight of Section 31
yeah,
as well,
amongst like
but...
other things. Like she's probably like commanded ships in the past, and
And is she overtly posting YouTube videos about her logic extremism, or is that a private thing that she does not spread all over the galaxy?
If they happen to go back and like reveal a bit more about that, and since it seemed to be a red herring and she's dead now anyway, I don't know that they will.
Yeah, probably not.
But I would imagine that that she was somebody who it was recently revealed she has like logic extremist sympathies or something like
and
that.
Cornwell is a psychologist, so maybe she's figured out something that is not
That would actually
obvious to everybody else.
That would I would dig that if she kind of had puzzled it out and like she's otherwise covered her tracks pretty well.
Because I suspect telling the difference between asshole Vulcan and asshole Vulcan extremist is probably a little hard for most humans.
so that works. Brian wins the no prize on that one.
All right, well,
But yeah, we will go into the Easter eggs. in our first Easter egg, I actually want to talk about her lie detector.
Yep.
Because it seems to work a lot like the psycho tricorder from the episode Wolf in the Fold.
Yes.
Which was basically a big lie detector.
Yes.
That only used in one episode.
Yes, and then vanishes.
Yeah.
I used to think the little white thing that in the original series when they were on trial, they put their hands on this little white glowy thing.
Yeah.
And as a kid growing up, I thought that was a lie detector.
But it was in Wolf in the Fold. Like that's when they're using the psycho tricorder.
Yeah, and I thought it was a lie detector, and so I thought every time we see them doing that, even in like the one where they put Data on trial, I think they had one of those in there too. That they had lie detectors in all of Star Trek. And so then when people started lying in courtroom stories in Star Trek, I was like, what happened to the lie detectors? And then I realized, oh, I just inferred those were lie detectors. There's only one episode where they explicitly talk about the psycho tricorder. And
I wish they would have called it the psycho tricorder in this episode. At the same time, I kind of hate them having a lie detector because, like, no one can ever lie on the show again. Like, that kind of... you kind of write yourself into a corner.
Well, I mean, I guess you don't always, like... It would be kind of funny couples going in there to, like, all right, I want to see where you were last night. Go to the lie detector room.
Yes.
Did they have one in the...
Also, let's face it, the name Psycho Tricorder is just dumb.
That's very 60s.
Yeah,
it's just...
Fatheree, you want it for canon reasons.
Well, no, it's just kind of like fun, pulpy sci-fi.
Yeah, it's
but I kind of...
All I think is, only with the tricorder.
Did they have a lie detector in the episode The Drumhead?
No, but they had a Betazoid.
That's what it was.
Basically can function the same. Well, that's kind of the problem with Betazoids. Is, okay, if you can read everyone's mind, like, you're kind of too powerful. We can never have any drama again. In my Star Trek role-playing, I'm like, no, you cannot play a Betazoid who can tell whether people are lying or telling the truth just by looking at them. I'm not allowing that. It limits me too much as a game master. We're not doing that. So. And I actually think that they should not have had the lie detector in this episode. But the fact that they did have it, well, you might as well call it a psycho tricorder at that point.
Did they ever not call it a psycho tricorder?
There's actually on screen, there's text that says, like, lie detector.
Oh, well,
yeah.
But moving on to the next Easter egg, the coordinates where the Section 31 transmissions were sent to, that turned out to be the Section 31 headquarters, were 7-4 Mark 5.6. 7-4 being, of course, 47 backwards.
What? That sort of fits because, you know, it's Section 31 and everything's upside down there.
Yeah, that's why the camera shows their ships upside down sometimes.
Oh, you know what? It did just occur to me when they did that kind of showy camera work when, what's her name? Arrived. When Cornwell arrived, and I was like, geez, they could maybe ease up on that a little bit. You don't have to show it when you're showing non-Section 31 stuff, but I guess she does, have her ties.
Yeah.
But I think it was also Jonathan Frakes just like having fun with all their toys on this high budget
$8 million. Whee!
I mean, like, he also directs episodes of the Orville, which I'm assuming are on like a much smaller budget, just based on the look of that show. So he's probably like, when I go to Discovery, I want to play with all the big toys over there. This episode also has some rarely heard Vulcan language. When Spock drops a new Vulcan proverb we hadn't heard before, unless it appears in like the books or something that I'm unfamiliar with.
You're tending to a plant that is dead?
Yeah. You're tending to a dead plant.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the way you said it, I don't know. But the Vulcan language dating back to the motion picture and then expanded on in Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan by Mark Okrand. Orkrand.
And then rebuilt for the motion picture again, as I recall, because in the special edition of the motion picture, they changed the subtitles of what everyone's saying, so that you've got two different versions of what those words mean, potentially.
And then you also have some Vulcan language that was spoken on Enterprise.
Yeah. Very
little, but they're actually using like Mark... I can't say his last name. What is it? Mark Orkrand?
I don't know. I've only ever read it. So.
Yeah, I don't hear it said out loud a lot. But
I'll just call him Mark.
But yeah, like they're basically using the language that Mark developed.
Oh, so they did get him in to help out with that too?
Yeah, he's actually been credited on some Discovery stuff.
Yeah, I knew he was doing the Klingon stuff, but I didn't. Okay.
And he did the Kelpian language in the Brightest Star.
Nice. Okay.
And then also in The Sound of Thunder, I suppose.
Yes. Decades from now, there'll be loads of Star Trek fans obsessed with learning Kelpian.
And then our next Easter egg, we have Cottis Cot being played on the Discovery, which was a very popular game on the USS Voyager.
Well, I kept thinking, is that a thing? I've never heard of that game. Isn't ringing a bell, but so it is a game from other Star Trek.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was it?
It's like a board game. We have like 3 different colors, and I mean, of course, like they never really explain the rules.
Well,
but, like,
yeah, but
the board kids like to play it.
Oh, okay, all right.
That makes sense.
Because I was kind of wondering why they didn't just go with 3D chess.
Apparently, it's popular with cyborgs.
Right.
Oh, all right. I guess, yeah, okay. Certain callback there.
And then a really noticeable Easter egg, but we do have kind of a callback to Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, when we see Starfleet personnel in environmental suits with magnetic boots walking through zero gravity, and there's floating blood.
Yeah.
I think probably
sort of a visual homage.
Yeah, I think it was intentionally echoing Star Trek VI.
Yeah.
Oh, and the name of the episode, Project Daedalus, which sets up a big mystery for next week. Project Daedalus kind of has some Star Trek ties. There is the Enterprise episode Daedalus, where we meet the inventor of the transporter. There's also the Daedalus class starships. And Project Daedalus in real life was a study done in the 1970s to try to develop an interstellar space vehicle that could reach another solar system within a human lifetime.
Huh.
Did not know that.
I did not know that. I might have heard that maybe, but it had fallen out of my head for the most part.
Of course, the obvious thing is it has mythological references too, as with the Icarus myth.
Daedalus, the father of Icarus, who also made wings, but he was smart enough not to fly too close to the sun.
And, before I got to the end of the episode and realized that this Project Daedalus is a thing that will be explored in subsequent episodes, when I was just kind of trying to turn over in my head, what does this mean? My first thought had been that because Daedalus also built the maze of the Minotaur in mythology, that threading the mines around Section 31's base was meant to in some way represent the maze thing.
Got a maze you got to fly through.
Multiple levels.
So it seems like next week's episode should be called Project Daedalus. Because this week's was not about Project Daedalus at all until check out Project Daedalus. And
right.
So, basically...
Not usually how episode titles work.
Yeah. It's like calling Star Trek II The Search for Spock. And so it's...
Well, even the search for Spock, they weren't really searching for him. They go from point A to point B, and then back to point A, and he's there. But that's all the Easter eggs I was able to find this week. Of course, if I missed anything, be sure to let me know. Comment on our channel or on Facebook, or tweet at me on Twitter. However you want to get a hold of me, and we will read your comment if you catch anything I missed. Just like Dave is about to share some feedback that we've received.
Right, some subspace transmissions here. First up, we've got a comment from Facebook from Adam B. Owen, who's commented on any number of things. He's excellent guy. He says, what's the episode we're talking about?
So we're talking about the Telosian episode last week.
Yeah, what was that called? Anybody?
Oh, I just watched it last night too. This is embarrassing.
If memory serves.
Oh, ironic.
If memory serves, what was it?
No, that was the episode. If memory serves.
Are we on a who's on first type?
Yes.
All right. Moving on, Adam says, I loved this episode. I was kind of indifferent to the Telosians and Vina showing up, but I really loved the Spock Mike moments. Very touching. Seeing little Spock saying he loved Mike was heartbreaking. I think you agree with all of the above, although I was obviously more into the Telosian stuff.
But yeah, that is interesting that he was more interested in the new things that episode presented to the mythology, and not the return to the old cage.
Do we know?
And that was kind of where I was too. If you'll,
I am curious. I don't know if Adam's told us in his comments. like where his Trek intro was, like, you know, what's does that episode, is it something you grew up with it, you know, or is it just kind of that's an episode from the original series?
Did you always think the
TOS
was bullshit and don't care about the cage, or
there are those?
What's your story on that, Adam? Let us know.
There is that segment of fandom, yeah. Next up is Jim Satsui. He says, cool that they inserted the clips from The Cage at the start. You can see the quality of 16mm film and 60s styling and special effects. 16mm film was what they were using at the time?
I believe Jim's correct on that. But okay. I agree with him because I thought that footage holds up so well and looks so gorgeous in HD.
Yep.
And I'm glad that we have the TOS remastered episodes. And I'm glad that they were able to showcase some of that remastered HD footage. On a new episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, it was, you know, there's a risk of, like, showing those flashbacks that viewers would be like, oh my gosh, it looks so campy in comparison. And I think that's why they chose that sort of stylish way to present it in that kind of pop, you know, wipes and flips and stuff like that they did.
I saw one, I think it was the X Astros website, did a review of it, and though I generally disagree with their reviews on Discovery, I did think their conclusion was that they're basically saying this is some sort of recreation of those events, that what we're seeing here is some sort of stylized recreation of what happened. And I was like, that makes more sense if this is some sort of, like, you know, kind of cheesy, fun recap of
to like explain the disparity of visual style?
Yes.
I would hope that it's not that, personally. I'm like, let's just acknowledge that it's a different era, and don't worry too much about making them fit perfectly.
They all fit in my headcanon.
I guess I keep coming back to Roddenberry's theory from the novelization of the motion picture that the original series is that we see is actually reenactments of the actual missions.
I hate that theory though, because I think TOS should just be like, no, this is canon, like this is what it was.
I would have been okay with it, except I keep finding evidence to support the theory. I'm sorry. So I'm okay with. I was fine with your version of it, but they keep throwing evidence my way.
Sometimes Savick looks like Kirstie Alley. Sometimes she looks like Robin Curtis.
Yeah.
That's I think, to me, that feels like, although it is a kind of clever thing, and I remember reading that in the book. It is also kind of, I feel like, a little bit of George Lucas wanting to go back and make everything in the original Star Wars episodes look as close as he could to the prequels, and that way lies madness. Last comment here from Alexandra Sendu. This was referring to, I think I brought up Lost, and it's kind of
from YouTube.
From the TV show Lost, I brought up for its kind of labyrinthine plot stuff. And relating to that, Alexandra says, unlike Lost, Discovery Season 1 was reverse engineered, if Kurtzman is to be believed. As for Season 2, this is what he said, and this is in quotes. The idea is you spend time at the beginning of the year really thinking through your season and saying, where do we want to go, and how do we reverse engineer the ending that we want to get to? And once you know the ending of your season, you can start planting all the seeds in the right way and laying down the path. I think we have known where we want to go from the beginning. So Alexandra says, so I'd say we're going to get our answers. Whether we're going to like them or not, or how we got there, it's a different issue. There's a little edited to add, oh, Brian, how it saddens me to see you trash my boy Peck Spock. Sigh. So apparently your criticisms were not taken well.
I'm sorry. I want to love him. And I don't hate him. I just feel like he's not grabbing me the way Patrick Stewart or the actress who plays Michael Burnham is. How do you say her name?
Sonequa Martin Green.
Yeah, Martin Green. The way Martin Green grabs me, or the way Anson Mount grabs me. He's just not. He's there and he's functional and he's doing the job. But I just am not being grabbed.
Didn't trash him though. Like Alexander, ease up on Brian a little. He didn't trash him. I think he said that Quinto would have done it better. And I mean, of course he's wrong. Peck is way better than Quinto. But...
The comment, I think, was said a little tongue-in-cheek. You don't put Cy and O'Brien.
I'm fine with it.
But I would actually be interested to hear back from Alexandra to hear specifically what it is about the Spock that's grabbing you. Because I just think that'd be interesting to hear.
No, I'd be interested. I always love people to explain in detail why
Well,
a
you're
show
wrong.
why a show is great when I didn't get it, because I love to have somebody explain why a story was good when I didn't.
I do
like it.
sometimes enjoy. Yeah, like
Yeah.
somebody else's enthusiasm can be infectious and turn me around sometimes.
Yeah.
As for the thoughts on the ending of whether that it does seem to be building something, they do seem to have thought this through. I think that there's kind of like sometimes putting a square peg into a round hole as far as like getting from plot point A to B sometimes. But definitely like they've laid the tracks for most of their stuff. I have a feeling I'm not going to like everything about it. I'm still going to have some quibbles with wherever we wind up in the season, but that there will be some craft in getting there.
Yeah, there is somewhat of a roadmap. They've done a good job this season of like planting seeds that they later.
Yeah, aside
Come
from,
to heart.
I mean, Arium stands out as the biggest blunder in the seed planting and foreshadowing so far this season, in my mind. That's the worst that it's been done. I feel it's actually been done very, very well all the way through.
And we know that there, again, like season 1, we know that there were some behind-the-scenes shakeups with the showrunners being fired halfway through the season, and then Alex Kurtzman coming in, and these last few episodes we've seen, and him and this writer, Michelle Paradise, running the show in season 3.
Maybe Tyler was supposed to be the Arium character in an earlier version.
Maybe they changed
and it was
that,
a very
halfway
last.
through.
Yeah, maybe they decided Tyler's evil was an old story, and we need to dump that and come up with something fresh.
I could see it.
It would make sense to use Arium because they're distancing themselves from the Spore Drive.
Yeah.
And her job is the Spore Drive Ops Officer.
Oh,
Is now obsolete.
Yeah.
So literally,
she is obsolete.
Yeah. Okay. So she's really
you lose
just
your job, you lose your life.
Sidekick, and they're having enough trouble justifying Stamets as it is. Losing, Stamets' sidekick is.
You don't know if she's third in command on the ship. Like we've seen her in the captain's chair several
Arium?
times. Yeah.
No, I did not.
I didn't
know
quite
that.
remember that. But that's interesting. If nothing else, by the way, since they did expand on her character, there should be a comic or a novel or something that tells her cool backstory.
Well, we did see a lot of her in the Mirror Universe, in the Mirror Universe comics.
It's true.
Where,
but I want to know about Nice Arium.
If you want to check that out and see what Mirror Universe Arium got up to, you can visit Tex-Trek number 50, where me and Dave recap that story and talk about it.
Good memory.
Because I don't delete anything.
Eventually, it's gonna all pile up.
I'm gonna crash.
Yeah.
A hard drive failure.
Dun, 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 dun.
But that is everything we have to say about Project Daedalus. Of course, next week we'll be back to discuss
Project Daedalus.
Yes, no doubt.
to discuss Project Daedalus in the episode Red Angel.
Right. Oh yeah.
Which will be all about Project Daedalus. In the last few seconds, they'll say, "Look, it's the Red Angel," and then they'll roll credits.
We're going to be moving into like the third act of the season.
End game.
Yes.
So I think we might find out who the Red Angel is next week.
That would be interesting.
Or at least get like some more information to help piece the clues together.
Just from the little next time on thing,
I didn't watch it.
Do you want to know some very minor thing?
If you think it's worth throwing in your 2 pennies about it, then
I'm gonna say it.
Okay.
There seems to be that there will be just a touch more about Arium. There'll be some follow up on her death.
Interesting.
And I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it, but maybe even some of the things that we've mentioned here, I guess there could be flashbacks or something still. So there may yet be. We may feel even sadder. I don't know. We'll see.
And the episode next week will be directed by Hanel Culpepper, who directed the season 1 episode Vaulting Ambitions. That was one of my favorite episodes. That was in the Mirror Universe. That was the one that ended with the big reveal that Lorca had been a Mirror Universe interloper all along.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my favorite moments in Discovery season 1.
I will say that they managed to get me to enjoy Mirror Universe stories, so there was definitely some good directing going on there.
And Culpepper is also going to be directing the series premiere of the #Picard show.
Mm-hmm.
So they seem to have some faith in her directing abilities, and that makes me think that we might get a pretty big episode next week.
Interesting.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe this is the episode that landed her the job to direct the Picard show series premiere. So.
All right. Lots of weight on this episode. Better live up, episode.
We will find out next week and be discussing that Sunday. But as always, until then,
Live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.